The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
I'm Calen McNeil from Big Wheel Burger.
I'm Sam Jones from 2% Jazz. And together we're from the
Bread and Butter Collective. Oh, in synchronicity.
I know. Well, it seems like we're doing a lot of things in synchronicity these days.
Oh,
but today we're not talking about synchronicity unless it comes up, which it will, I'm sure. We're talking about origin stories, and specifically, Calen McNeil, it's your origin story.
I'm going to go back to when I was a little baby. I'm going to...
Kyle, can we get a time travel sound on this one?
Yeah. I grew up in Terrace, BC.
All right.
My dad was a business guy. My mom actually was a business person too. She worked at a library and then she had a store in the mall. So I was exposed to business fairly early in life. And I feel like I always wanted to do business. I had an aspiration to be an international business person, whatever that looked like. I didn't know what it meant back when I was 10. But I started business early because I was in high school and I used to throw these parties. And I think I started throwing maybe at 15 or something like that, like a house party, nothing crazy. But somebody came to me. I was at a dance and I was actually, I think I was security at a dance. And there's a DJ, and then the DJ came up to me and said, you should maybe think about putting on a dance yourself. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, why don't you rent a hall? You can book me, $500 a night or whatever, and throw a dance. Because it was a school dance at a lower grade school that I was there doing security. And I was like, oh, okay. And the business person, I'm like, hey, that might make sense. Yeah. So from the time I think we started when I was 15 until my last one, I was 19, actually. I threw dances every 2 weeks, rented a hall, hired a DJ, and basically paid for my later college, paid for a trip to Japan where I lived 6 months.
You went to Japan?
I went to Japan.
Oh, my goodness.
So once I got out of that, so that was my first entrepreneurial experience, and I always wanted to do business school. So prior to that, I was doing karate. So I had a black belt in karate. I was on the BC karate team, really into it. Where other people were doing basketball and hockey, I was doing karate. The instructor of the karate worked for my dad. So, I don't think I was out of line anyways, but he thought it would be good exercise and discipline. And I always kind of like Bruce Lee and that kind of stuff. So I did karate, got a black belt in karate, went and trained in Japan. So that was my first kind of awakening moment of realizing that there's a life outside of a small town of Terrace.
Right. How old were you when you got your black belt, just out of curiosity?
I got my black belt technically when I was 17 because I had just turned 17. So you can get a black belt in my style of karate when you're 16, but you can't do it any younger. Right. So I was 17. I was, competing a lot in it. It was a really instrumental part of my life. And I got an opportunity to go train at the home dojo in Japan.
Wow, what a great opportunity.
Yeah, and I did that for 6 months. And at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was working because I went to Japan when I was 19. And I was working for a candy company, and he wanted me, I was delivering, and I got into sales. And I've always been a kind of sales guy. So the owner of the company, it was Dolman Sales at that point, really nice family-run business. And he said, I want, why don't, when you come back, you can, take over my business. I'd like you to, do that. And at the time, I was like, not interested because I'm going to Japan. I'll see where my life takes me. But the one thing I learned when I was in Japan was that it doesn't really matter where you're at. It's what you do when you're there. I got the broader worldview of what happens in another culture. I learned a bunch of the language, a different food, and it was a magnificent experience. I elevated my karate game immensely when I was there. But when I came back, I was really wanting to come back and just focus. And I actually thought I would stay in Terrace. And that was a key event that didn't happen for me, because I think my life trajectory would be very much different had I stayed in Terrace. And Terrace is a beautiful city, but it is small. my worldview had changed quite a bit because I had been to Japan and had that experience.
Were you in Tokyo in Japan?
No, I was in southern Kyushu, which is the southern island in the, there's Honshu in the front, and I'm probably gonna, Hokkaido, and
Right.
all these things are. I got Hokkaido in the top, and so I was in Kyushu, in southern Kyushu, a little town called Kumamoto. And back when I went there, there was still obviously a lot of foreigners there, but in our community there was maybe 100 teachers, like English teachers, and then we were the guys there to train karate. So people were pointing at us and kind of making fun of us, and it was a really like surreal experience. And we basically just trained karate every day. So got up, meditated at 6:30 till 7:30, then trained in the morning session. Then we had a afternoon session, and the training was so hard. I used to have to run and work out on off times just to be able to keep up with the workout the next day. So I ended up losing. I think I was 19 in great shape. I ended up losing probably 30 pounds just because of sweat.
Whoa.
And we went there in the summer, late summer. So we were there in really hot
in those
weather,
southern
and
islands, too.
I didn't know what a workout was until I went there. So it was good. It really kind of, the discipline from karate has helped me throughout my life, and it really kind of focused that, down. So coming back to Terrace, the Dolman Sales, the company that I was thinking I was going to go back and work for and take over and grow, he had sold to Pepsi. So the Pepsi distributor up there. So I went and worked for him. And the key moment for me was when they offered me the full-time delivery driving job. And it was at the time I was like 20 at that time, or 21. I guess I would be 20. And it was like $50,000 a year back in 1991. And that was a lot of money.
Sure.
Like you could buy a house, you could do all kinds of things with that. But I just knew I wanted to try something different because I always wanted to do international business. I had gone to Japan. My Japanese was okay. I'd learned a bunch when I was there. And I looked at Camosun College, and they had an international business program, Pacific Rim Business it was called. And it was a new program to Camosun, but it offered everything. And I was always like, I just wanted to do it. I didn't want to necessarily learn. I didn't feel like I needed a degree. I thought, let me get a diploma and a base level of knowledge and run with it. So, and it taught Japanese. There's two-year Japanese language course, which I thought would really help with my language skills. It had international marketing, accounting, and all those things. All the stuff I was interested in. And in school, I wasn't very good. I mean, I was kind of a C student. I was really into karate, and I played soccer, and I put on those dances, and I was into the social scene and things. So it allowed me also to go there and take some remediation courses, like math. I'd failed math 10 or whatever, and I had to repeat it. So I ended up having to take a couple makeup courses and then got into Camosun, and that's where I first met you.
That's right.
Even though we didn't really hang out, but I remember seeing you there, and your origin story was hilarious with how long you were there. I was there only 2 years.
What, you weren't there for the
No,
whole
I
7?
wasn't there 7.
Really?
No.
I thought everyone went for 7 years.
I figure hearing your story, I guess I was fast-tracked. I don't know.
You were just smarter than I was.
No, I don't know if it's smart.
You were driven.
I
sure.
knew what I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
I think that was the key. Like I've always, and I think martial arts did that for me. Clear direction, clear path. So I from there I went and I worked at Canadian Springs Water Company, and I started working there part-time in the last year of school. That's where I actually met Joe Zambri, my then future, what would have been my future wife.
Your then future soon-to-be ex?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of yes.
It's nothing's linear. We're cyclical.
That's right.
So I went and worked for Canadian Springs Water Company, and I always wanted to do my own thing. So I was still training karate at the time, so I was still competing on the BC karate team. So I was at a karate tournament, and this is where my life took a really big turn. And I think it's an important component of who I am today. I went into this karate tournament, and the tournament was in August. I tore my knee ligament, my ACL. Obviously, I needed surgery. Surgery date was booked for December 14th. I got the surgery. It was fairly quick. I think there was a cancellation or something. So I went and got surgery on my knee. Surgery went great. in the recovery room, saw friends and family. The doctor told me that I'd never compete in karate again because there's too much damage to it. And I was upset about that, but I was also coming out of the anesthetic and whatnot. But that night I ended up going into a coma. I overdosed on morphine, and then I was in a coma for 5 days. And the doctors basically suggested they take me. I was intubated, and they suggested they take me off life support. And it was right around Christmas, and my family said, "Well, let's wait till Christmas Day to make that decision." So I woke up fast forward just behind it. I went into coma on the 15th. Surgery was on the 14th, early morning on the 15th. They had a meeting with my family on the 19th and saying like he's a 2 on the Glasgow coma scale. There's no hope of recovery. All of those things. My family obviously was deeply upset. Everybody was there. They said, well, let's wait a week before we make a decision like that. I had started contracting pneumonia, so they said we can let the pneumonia take them. And the very next day, my eyes opened. And my dad was in the room. And how they knew I was sort of like coming out of it is I tracked him as he was walking through the room. And then that was sort of the beginning of the rebirth of me.
Were you fairly conscious of what?
I have
What was
memories
going
of the
on?
coma. Like obviously, this is a way deeper, story.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of memories and there's a lot of symbolism. My grandmother was married to the hereditary chief of the Sioux Nation at the
Okay.
time, and they did a sweat lodge for me and a ceremony. And I remember being at a sweat lodge ceremony in Sioux in my coma. Like when I woke up, I
Wow.
remembered the experience. I remember it in great detail. I remember an eagle and that whole thing, and it left a really deep impression on me.
I bet that
Which
would
was
change your life.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. But obviously, when I woke up out of the coma, I had to relearn how to walk. I was quadriplegic.
Really?
Yeah, and the myelin sheath in my brain or my nerves were damaged. But that was the good news because they didn't know that at the time. But myelin sheath can regenerate, which is basically the conductor between the nerves.
Right.
So that would mean that I would get my movement back. But at the time, they said you're going to be a quadriplegic. So my family's making preparation for that. I was lying in the hospital going, what the hell is going on? Moved to the rehab center. That was where I started to get some stuff back. I remember just being there looking, I was 24 at the time and looking around and just, 4 months earlier was in a karate tournament at the provincial championships. And now I'm sitting in, they put me on the stroke ward because they don't want to have me with people with paraplegic because they thought maybe there'd be a chance I get some stuff back. So I was with people that had pretty severe strokes, and it was kind of a mind-bending experience at the time. But I just put my head down, and as I started getting movement back, I just started getting going again. And I just used to walk up and down the halls of GF Strong until I couldn't walk anymore. Because I figured it didn't matter where I was going to go. Like I always had that idea. It was like, if I just put the work in, I'll have a better result than if I just sit and wait or feel sorry for myself or any of that. So I just said, as long as I can walk, I'm just going to keep walking until I can't walk anymore. And I eventually was able to walk a block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, and so on. And then I've got, obviously I'm, 99% back.
Well, yeah, you play soccer now.
Yeah, I played
You
soccer.
play soccer
Yeah,
and have a great life.
yeah, all those things.
Wow.
So from there, because in my accident, I had worked for Canadian Springs Water Company, they treated me so well. A lot of what I do in business today date back to how they treated me there. Cam Watt and Glenn Bailey owned the company, and they basically paid my salary while I was in recovery. And I met Joe. So Joe and I kind of had a cantankerous relationship when we worked together. She managed one department, I managed another.
Of what?
Of Canadian Springs.
Oh, she was working.
Yeah,
for
she was
Canadian
working.
Springs as
That's
well.
where I met Joe.
Oh, okay.
So I wouldn't be in the food business if it wasn't for Joe or us working together and meeting together. And even in fact, I probably wouldn't be with Joe had I not had the accident, because our trajectory of our paths were going in a different way. We didn't really get along that well. We had issues, and yeah, when I was in the coma, she brought food to all of my family every single day. And when I woke up, they're talking about Joe, and I'm like, Joe, like Joe Zambri, like kind of thinking, what? And the whole light went around it was like super interesting because I didn't look at her in that way. So I saw a different side of her. So we ended up dating, and then as a result of everything, we had an opportunity to do something like what we wanted. And I asked Jo what she wanted to do, and she said she wanted to open a restaurant business with her brother. So, and at the time, I wanted to pursue my import business and international business. So I did that. I started importing water coolers from Asia and selling them to Home Depot and London Drugs and Safeway, all these places, and had some success with that. It was a learning curve. Like that was my school of hard knocks with business and a lot of different variables there. But Jo and Peter and I opened Zambris, and that was my first, introduction to restaurant business. And I was always the guy that would just apply the business knowledge into that business and go, okay, well, here's what I know. I kind of know balance sheets and business plans. And so I'm going to do business plan and balance sheets and financials, and then try to marry it with the creative artistic nature of restauranting and Peter's passion in cooking. He was a very successful chef. He'd worked at Souk Harbor House. He'd been in Italy for 4 years prior to this. So I figured it would be a great business, not knowing how hard the business was. So that was where we got into Zambris, and that was in 1999.
Well, so your first food business was my all-time favorite restaurant.
Yes,
I
wow.
love the
I just hit home
nothing
runs.
against your current location. It's gorgeous,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
drop dead gorgeous. But
It had a
I have a
special
real
vibe.
special spot in my heart for the original Zambri.
Yeah.
Much like you have the special spot for the original anything.
Coming from my coma, when you have that type of experience, your life and view of life does change, but you end up falling back into your old traits of just normal everyday stuff. But I always had this feeling that I needed to do something better, and I didn't want to just be doing the things that everybody does and making those, you know, choices that people have to make in life about whether I do this right thing or do this wrong thing or whatever. I just didn't want to. I just wanted to do things clean and pure, and I didn't want to make my second chance. I didn't want to waste it.
Right.
It's not that I had huge aspirations of being, whatever, but I just knew my story wasn't going to be one where I had to compromise my values and those types of things. So I really, when I came back and wanted to figure out what my path was actually where the restaurant business was, because I really got into doing that and trying to perfect it. And then, trying to perfect the partnership angle of it, because, I'm Scottish, Joe and Peter are Italian, very fiery and passionate, and I value them as partners. We've been partners the whole time. Mine and Joe's marriage ended after, in 2010, right when we were about to start Big Wheel Burger. The pressure of all of it together, we're just better suited as friends and business partners, and we've been able to navigate that relationship throughout the entire time. And that is something I'm very proud of, as far as attribute for both Joe and myself, is being able to do that.
That sounds really complicated, and kudos to you both, really, for managing your way through that. And you were at Camosun, you were thinking of being an international business person. Has that changed? Would you ever want to take, say, Big Wheel international?
There's a lot of appeal to just being on Vancouver Island and living, a wonderful life. But, our foundation and the community work that we're starting to do is really sort of taking the direction of purpose that I felt I needed following my coma, and just doing good, trying to do good, and trying to also change the way business is done, because business is so profit driven that there's not a lot of heart in profit. There's things you can do with it, but there's not a lot of heart and soul. In order to make profit, somebody has to give up something. So somebody's giving up the labor, the effort. Sometimes they lose money and all the stuff in order to hold this profit. And then some people just, I need more profit, need more profit. I'd rather build community and flip it on its head, where you're like, let's build the community from the bottom up, where we're supporting our staff. And this comes back to my philosophy on education and learning and things like that, is it seems lofty. Oh, wouldn't it be ideal to have this perfect thing where your community is supported and they support you and you support your staff and all that kind of stuff? And people kind of look at it maybe as airy fairy. And I'm like, how are you ever going to do it if you don't say you're going to do it and try to do it perfectly and try to implement it and try to make it happen? I'd rather spend my time making good things like that happen and maybe fail, but having tried is the point. And I think through our business and through the ups and downs, we're now at a position where we're able to do really good things and still make a profit. And you know what? Building that philosophy that can be supported, and then as it turns out, people will support you and they'll allow you to do things that you may be afraid to do or not fear of doing, raising your prices or giving a good product or, doing the things you need to do to run a successful business. If you just make it profit focused, you're going to lose sight of your staff, you're going to lose sight of the community, you're going to lose sight of your customers,
Right.
and lose sight of the whole, like the soul of the business,
Well,
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and I think that your partners and your community owe you and your beautiful brain a lot. So I sure love going to Big Wheel Burger, and I sure love being able to hear how it started and where you came from. We come at our businesses from such very, very different backgrounds, yet here we are together.
It's crazy.
Talking about them, and we're both doing wonderful things.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing your story. It's very inspiring and super touching. So thanks, man.
Sam.
No problem.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, 900 Degrees Wood-Fired Pizzeria, Agrius, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Brentwood Bay Village Emporium, Nourish and Charlotte the Quail, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Hoyne Brewing, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Rain Dogs, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, Taco Stand Al Pastor, Took, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, and Zambri's.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.